what are you charging and what does that include and what is your profit margin? Your expenses are not their expenses, and expenses make all the difference in what you're charging. It is impossible as a cheer gym to run a volume-based business. Why? Because we have finite hours and space. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cheer Biz Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Cotton, and today we are going to be talking about why I don't care what my competitors are charging. Now, before we get into the episode, make sure if you are an owner, you have gone over to Cheer Gym Owners on Facebook and you have joined that group. And if you are an owner or an owner and coach, you've joined All-Star Cheer Coaches and Owners on Facebook as well, where you can get in on the conversation and also ask questions that I'm going to see and oftentimes respond to on the podcast. So make sure you're in those groups. Now, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can probably see, or maybe you even hear a difference. I am not in my normal studio that I have set up. I'm back at home. It's New Year's Day. It's January 1st. I'm getting ready to leave for Vegas tomorrow morning for our conference. I could not be more excited to see all of you that are going to be there. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. I'm super pumped to be there and be with everyone. I'm gearing up and ready to go, but I wanted to sit down and make sure you guys had an episode on Saturday if you're not going to be at conference, so you can still get some great learning in. And I'm actually going to be talking about this a little bit in one of the classes that I'm giving. So this is why I don't care what my competitors are charging. Now, I probably see about 3 posts per week of people asking what other gyms or other owners are charging for X, Y, and Z service. And it varies in terms of what it is that they're asking about and what group they're asking in, but it seems very common. Hey, I'm looking to start a ninja program. What are you charging? Hey, I want to start recreational tumbling classes. What are you all charging? Hey, I want to start an all-star team. What are you charging? Or hip hop dance or whatever. What are you charging? What are you charging? What are you charging? And I don't care what my competitors are charging. Now, I understand that this comes from a very normal mindset of I need to do some research and learn a little bit more. And that's going to give me a ballpark of knowledge of what is an industry standard, and what someone else is charging will then kind of get me into the right headspace. And I get why people think that way, because I did it myself when I was first starting out. I spent a lot of time looking at what were my competitors charging. You know, I remember, and I know people still do this. It was like the packet wars of like, oh, well, you would have, someone's parent would call your gym to see if they could get your packet so they could figure out what you were charging for All-Star, which now, like, I don't care. Like, literally anyone could ask to see my pricing. I don't care at all. I will happily share it with someone when it comes to what I charge for my All-Star fees and everything else. I'm an open book on that stuff. I don't think there's any reason to gatekeep it. Plus, it's really not that valuable because it's just not important to know exactly what they're charging. Now, what people are thinking about when they're thinking about charging is they're thinking about the concept of, well, to be competitive, I need to be equal to what they're charging, or I need to be on par with what people are expecting in the industry. And while I can see where you're coming from in that, and it's very common to do, pricing evaluations and all those other things. And in fact, I am incredibly passionate about pricing, hence why I'm talking about this. And I've alluded to it in other podcasts. I'll drop a little bit more information at the end of the episode, but pricing is something I spend a lot of time working on, thinking about, and working with my clients on. So when we're looking at what our competitors are charging and why I don't care about it, number one, a far more relevant question to ask is, what are you charging and what does that include and what is your profit margin? If you were to ask someone else, not what do you charge for this, but what are you charging and what does that include and what is your profit margin on that thing? Because if I ask someone the nebulous question of, you do a hip hop team, what do you charge for hip hop? And they give me an answer, but I don't understand that hip hop to them is practice once a week. It includes none of the costumes, none of the choreography, none of the competition fees, none of that stuff. And they just say, well, we charge $129 a week. And I go, okay, well then I need to make it so, or $129 a month. I need to make it so my hip hop program is $129 a month. But in my head, I have it that they're going to practice 4 hours a week, and that's going to include their costumes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can very quickly get into a bad position. I also want to know what people's profit margins are, because I'm calling a spade a spade. People in this industry do not set proper profit margins. Even when they think they're setting those, they are not doing it correctly. They're only taking the exact cost of good and marking it up, giving it a profit margin of 30% per se, because that's what everyone thinks is kind of the gold standard. And I know I did too, but I would look at it and I would say, okay, well, the class, I pay this instructor, this is my payroll, et cetera, and I'm going to mark that up 30%. Well, that doesn't include expenses. That doesn't include rent, electricity, processing fees, all of those other things that can very, very quickly eat up any of that 30% profit you were making. Because the things that we're charging for in this industry, for the most part, although people talk about how expensive the sport is, a lot of the fees that stay within the gym are really often not that excessive. So if you are charging 30% on a $99 product, we're barely getting over a, 918. So we're getting just over $25 in profit. So that can disappear very quickly. Like, we're not operating with these margins on really high dollar amounts. So if I have a product that I'm selling for $30,000 and I make 30%, that's a little bit different than a product that I'm selling for $59 or $69 or $99 or even $129. At 30%, I'm really not bringing in that much revenue in the terms of what can get eaten up very quickly. So I really want to know what it is that people are, if I'm curious about what people are charging, I'm much more curious about what their charges include and what their margins are on those things, because that's going to give me a little bit more of a like, okay, I can emulate that. That actually makes sense because I would be profitable. But even then, you still shouldn't do it, because number two is your expenses are not their expenses, and expenses make all the difference in what you're charging. If you are setting pricing without knowing what exactly your expenses are, what it is you need to cover, and I'm not talking about just the expense of the staff member, I'm talking about all of the expenses. If you are making pricing decisions without fully understanding that information, then you are playing darts blindfolded and you are just guessing. And going off of someone else's pricing is a fool's errand. It is just not what you should be doing for a variety of reasons. Number one is demographics and locations are different. So I live in a major metropolitan area where the minimum wage is relatively high. The household income is relatively high, where my good friends in Arkansas, in the middle of nowhere with a town of 1,100 people, they need to keep their price point a little bit lower than mine. Now, they shouldn't set their pricing based off of my pricing, and I shouldn't set their pricing or my pricing based off of their pricing, because the two demographics are completely different. You can go to a restaurant there and eat a full meal for $9. You can barely eat McDonald's for $9 in my area, let alone an actual like sit down restaurant. So it's just different. Their expenses are also going to be different. For instance, Danielle and Justin and their business partners, Dustin and Angie, they own their gym, and they bought their gym and they got a really good deal, and they put a lot of money into it since then, but their mortgage is nowhere close to my rent. And so if I were to base my pricing based off of their pricing, which is set for their expenses and their payroll and their profit margins, I would be upside down, 110%. I would be upside down. So a really quick mathematical example of this, and I don't actually have it in front of me, so I'm going to do this off the top of my head. I've done this before, I've written it down, but I don't have the writing up in front of me, is if I have 100 kids in tumbling classes and they're each paying $50 a month to take my tumbling classes, right? Then I have 100 times 50, I'm making $5,000 a month off of my tumbling kiddos. And if me and my competitor are set exactly the same, and they're charging 50 with 100 and I'm charging 50 with 100, we're both making the same amount of money. But if their rent is only $2,000 a month and mine is $5,000 a month, I'm breaking even and they are well into being able to start to actually make a profit. And we've set our pricing the same. We can even be offering a very similar service, but now I'm upside down. So if I don't truly understand what my expenses are, I'm not going to be making intelligent decisions when I am figuring out what I should be charging. So again, I don't really care what other people are charging. Oftentimes also when people are asking this question, it's because they're trying to do the pricing play of, if I price myself cheaper than what other people are offering the same product for, I'm actually going to get more clients. And that's not entirely true. There are a variety of reasons for this, but being the cheapest option is not necessarily the best thing. In fact, I would strongly encourage against being the cheapest option for a myriad of reasons, not the least of which being pricing down, pricing lower, and trying to outcompete your competitors on the lowest price is a swift path to zero. You can only go to zero. The top end of pricing is essentially limitless. You can always go higher. So I never want to be competing to see who can get to the bottom faster, because it just makes it even more difficult. On top of that, when you're setting your pricing to be as bargain as possible, you can never actually achieve what your gym is capable of achieving, because cannot be a volume-based business. It is impossible as a cheer gym to run a volume-based business. Why? Because we have finite hours and space. And so we're far more limited by the prime hours to deliver our service after school to bedtime. And when you're looking at like classes and things like that, really those prime hours are between 3:30, and that's not even really that great, like 4:30, 5 o'clock to 7:30 is like, that's your golden hour. That's where people are really willing to do extra things. Past 7:30, yeah, you could get some of the high school kids that drive themselves, but parents are going to be less excited about driving kids around and things like that. So you start to get a little bit later, and I'm specifically talking for classes, you start to see diminishing returns. So we have a very limited window. On top of that, we have very limited space, and we have to have student to instructor ratios and all of those other challenges. So we can never be that volume-based business. It just doesn't work. We're never going to be able to follow the McDonald's model of serving a bajillion people in a day to make our millions and millions of dollars. My number 3 is that pricing is one of the most critical levers you can pull in your business, but it must be done with intentionality. You have to understand how to cover payroll, operating expenses that you want to cover, what your enrollment minimums are, what your percentage of profit needs to be, how much of that profit, like what that profit is actually going to. Because again, oftentimes people will go, oh, I made a profit, but that profit is covering electric, gas, rent, front of house services, coffee, all of those other things, and it's not actually budgeted for. And then you really don't have any profit, and you end up being at a loss every single year. And you go, I don't understand. We're bringing in more than the class costs. Well, that's not true. Every minute in your facility costs money. Your facility can create money with that time. So you have to be very, very intentional with it. And pricing is it's the most amazing lever you can pull on to immediately change things in your business to bring in more revenue. And the reason we're trying to bring in more revenue is so we can deliver a better product. This is my overarching theme. Instead of asking people what they charge, figure out what other people are delivering. What value are they bringing to their clients' lives? Because it's far more about the value that you deliver than the price that you deliver. Because what people want is they want extreme value for a reasonable price. That's what they're looking for. So the more value you deliver, the higher of a price you could charge. Now, I'm not insinuating you should do this, but if you were able to offer a program where you not only provided tumbling, but you also guaranteed that within 3 months, a new kid would be throwing a back handspring, and you could guarantee that they were going to make their high school cheerleading, and you could guarantee that they were going to make a college cheerleading program with a scholarship, and you were able to guarantee all of those things, no questions asked, like guarantee it's going to happen. If you follow our program, this is going to happen. You'd be able to charge a pretty significant amount of money for that because you would be delivering an immense value. Now, I'm not saying you can guarantee those things. I'm just using that as kind of an outlandish example of giving someone significant value. So what are those things that you can do to bring value to people's lives in your gym? And that is where I think there are relevant questions to ask other gym owners and other coaches and other people of what are you doing to bring value to your clients' lives? That's what I care about far more than what I care about what my competitors are charging. I care about what value are my competitors bringing to their clients' lives, and then how can I emulate that in my own gym. Now, I mentioned I was going to have a little bit of a comment on this at the end. I am super excited. Pricing is something I'm very passionate about. And part of the reason I'm passionate about it is I have been writing a book on this for the last 2 years. I've been working on this manuscript. Now, I haven't been writing for 2 years, but it's been going through the process and being cleaned up. And it is set to release this January. I don't have a specific date. It would be out sooner, but I made a grammatical error that had to get fixed before we could actually send everything to print. So it is coming out. The book is called Charge What You're Worth, the Cheer Pricing Handbook. And it is going to be out on print. You'll be able to pick it up on Amazon and other online bookstores. It will be out on ebook, and it will be out on Audible. So you'll be able to pick it up a variety of different ways. We're going to have a lot of workbooks. A lot of the things that I talk through, this was just like a little itty bitty dip of the toe into some of the things I discuss in the book about pricing and how to charge what it is that you're truly worth in your gym and what you bring to your clients' lives. I talk about how to add value. I talk about how to find your client avatar. I talk about how to market appropriately to them. I talk about strategies to increase your prices in an ethical way that your clients will understand and be willing to pay for. I talk about how to sell better. There's all sorts of amazing content in the book. I spent a lot of time on it. I've pulled a lot of information from my experiences. I tell a lot of my stories in there from my life and the errors that I've made. So I'm not sitting up here on a high horse. I'm sitting here saying I've made these mistakes and I want to help you avoid them if I can. If you would do me that favor, if you've been listening and you enjoy the content or it's something you feel you could grow from, please pick up the book. Again, it's called Charge What You're Worth. It will be out very, very soon. It would mean the world to me if you would pick it up and read it. And if it makes a difference in your gym, share it with someone else and or just, enjoy the fruits that brings to your life. I hope you all had an amazing New Year's. I hope you had an amazing Christmas. This is the first episode I'm recording since before the holidays really kicked off. So it's nice to be back with you guys. We've got a lot of plans for 2025. If you have not taken advantage of everything we have, don't forget we have the fireside chat with Justin and Danielle. We have blogs that are coming out regularly. We have 2 books, the Cheer Gym Owner's Handbook and Charge What You're Worth. We've got conferences going on. We just released that we have our conference in Orlando prior to the All-Star World Championships. And we have our June conference in Texas. Both are going to be fantastic. If you're already going to be at All-Star Worlds, make sure you check out that event. It's going to be cool. And we're changing the format, so it's going to be unlike anything we've ever done before. So you're going to love that. And then our June conference is going to be kind of like it has been in terms of tons of tracks, great for coaches, lots of information, and we're even expanding more. We've got some really cool partnerships we're excited about. So make sure you're staying tuned to all of that. Thank you all for listening. Welcome to 2025. Let's make it a banger and an amazing year. Let's accomplish all of our goals. If we can help in any way, please reach out. NextGen is here to help you grow your gym. And with that, we will catch you on the next episode.